Hello, and thank you for joining me at Spooky Reviews. I'm the Ghostess, and in honor of Friday the 13th, I decided to watch and recap the entire Friday the 13th film series in under 13 minutes. Last January. So for this October's Friday the 13th, I decided to watch and recap the entire series of Jason Voorhees' best frenemy, Freddy Krueger. So here in its entirety, this is Nightmare on Elm Street in under 13 minutes. Start the clock now! A Nightmare on Elm Street. Someone completes a last-minute metal shop assignment, and we meet Tina in the middle of a nightmare about a razor-clawed man who has been haunting her best friend Nancy, and boyfriend Rod, reminding them all of the world's creepiest jump rope rhyme from their childhood. Did I mention this movie is also introducing Johnny Depp in his typecasted role of the comic relief boyfriend? During a sleepover, Tina goes outside to see who is throwing rocks at her window, only to find her boogeyman, which she honestly should have guessed. He shows off his gross-out powers before murdering her all over the bedroom. Rod gets blamed for her death, and Nancy's father/police detective John Saxon catches him after he innocently drags Nancy into the bushes. Nancy nods off in class and follows Tina's blood trail to a boiler room where she's once again faced with the man with the finger knives. She burns herself awake, realizing that what happens in the dream happens for real. Nancy drews herself into the investigation, interviewing witnesses and conducting dream experiments, all while trying to stay awake to avoid being killed. She has Johnny Depp in the 80s alone in her bedroom, and she just has him watch her sleep. What a waste. But he fails at his post, leaving Rod on the short end of the sheet. Nancy confronts her mother and finally learns that her parents and their friends once burned a child murderer named Fred Krueger alive, and he vowed vengeance on them, but that's totally unrelated to what's happening here. Then Freddy turns Depp into a Tahitian treat fountain. Nancy realizes she can pull Krueger back into the real world through her dreams, so she sets up elaborate booby traps that would make Kevin McAllister jealous. And after a final dream battle, she attempts to prank Krueger to death before he drags her mother down to spend eternity as a crypt keeper. She then reverse Tinkerbells him by taking away her belief and sending him away for good. Or does she? She does not. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, which is arguably what the first movie was actually about. Jesse is the new kid in town, moved into Nancy's old house and already having nightmares about Freddy driving a bus, even before his girlfriend Lisa finds Nancy's old diary. Weird things start to happen, like the toaster catches on fire, the pet bird explodes, the sister takes up night jump rope, and this cleaning your room montage. Jesse wanders to the local neighborhood leather bar, which must be on school grounds because he runs into the S&M gym coach who forces him to run laps and take a shower. The coach gets tied up, stripped naked, towel snapped, and it ends in a literal bloodbath. Jesse wakes up wearing the claw, unsure of what he's done. Lisa plays Nancy Drew this time, tracking down info on Fred Krueger and finding the plant where he used to work and murdered his victims. He continues feeling Freddy coming out of him more and more until he does so quite literally and then kills his homoerotic frenemy named Grady. He goes back to Lisa at her pool party, which is also quite literally heating up. Lisa pep talks Jesse, but Freddy arrives and comes after the partygoers. It's up to Lisa to save Jesse, returning to Krueger's old stomping grounds. Fear magic is up and running, tricking her with hallucinations until she inspires Jesse to fight back with the power of love. Krueger burns and Jesse is freed just in time to take an eerily familiar school bus ride. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Young Patricia Arquette plays Kristen, a teenager downing spoonfuls of Maxwell House with Diet Coke and cranking loud rock music to avoid sleeping. When forced to bed by her mother, Krueger slices her wrists, making it look like a suicide attempt. She gets checked into an oddly specific mental ward for suicidal teenagers with sleep disorders, and we meet the rest of our cast. Former heroin addict Taryn, aspiring actress and cigarette smoker Jennifer, sleepwalking puppet enthusiast Philip, troublemaker tough guy Kincaid, mute kid into nurses Joey, and a nerdy kid in a wheelchair named Will. And all of them are having nightmares about our favorite fedora-wearing ghoul. We are reintroduced to Nancy Thompson, recently graduated with a degree in, nightmareology, and is the only one who believes the children. Philip is the first to go, in the Nightmare on Elm Street Before Christmas, when he's puppeteered into sleepwalking off a ledge. Freddy then goes after his arch-nemesis Zsa Zsa Gabor, before helping Jennifer to get ahead in television. Dr. Neil Gordon begins to question his sanity until Nancy finally explains what's happening and tells the kids about Freddy Krueger, and that he's after them because they're the last of the Elm Street children. They come up with a game plan using Kristen's power of pulling people into her dreams and try it while hypnotized. In dreams, the kids all develop their own imagination powers, like magic, super athleticism, super strength, and to be beautiful with a lot of weapons. But before they get the chance to create their own extended universe film series, mute Joey is lured away with the promise of naughty nurse, but gets Freddy instead, literally tongue-tying him over the mouth of hell, which, in the real world, puts him into a coma, resulting in Nancy and Neil getting fired. Neil repeatedly encounters a nun dressed in white, Sister Mary Helena, who is, spoiler alert, dead the whole time, and Freddy Krueger's mother, who was impregnated when she was raped by lunatics. On her advice, Neil forces drunken police chief Daddy Saxon into a road trip / scavenger hunt for a crucifix, holy water, Freddy's bones, and some hole to bury it all. Meanwhile, Kristen has to be sedated and locked in solitary, vulnerable to another Freddy attack once she passes out. Looks like it's time for Nancy to get the gang back together. Freddy attacks them immediately with feathers. Freddy kills Flashback Mom, and Kristen uses her Mary Lou Retton powers to escape. Taryn doesn't fare so well when she ends up in Heroin Alley. Dungeons & Dragons tries to magic away his metal album cover wheelchair, but the power of belief works both ways, and his magic doesn't affect Freddy, so he gets got. Kincaid, Nancy, and Kristen meet up in the Elm Street lair. Kincaid calls Krueger a pussy repeatedly, which is apparently the open sesame they needed because it conjures a gateway to his boiler room of doom, where they head to rescue Joey. Each attack Freddy, but the souls of children are literally part of him, making him stronger. Neil digs a grave in a junkyard where Freddy was hidden. The junkyard cars come to life, and Freddy inhabits his, skeleton to kill Nancy's dad, knock out Neil, throw some dirt on him, do a victory pose, and jump back into the dream. He's temporarily defeated by the mute guy's sonic boom, and Nancy's father shows up in a Hallmark original special effect that is of course our killer, finger knifing her to death, and then she does the same to him. Neil comes to, finishes burying Freddy, and it seems Nancy can finally rest in peace. Can you tell this one's my favorite? It's pretty much all downhill from here. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. Kristen is no longer Patricia Arquette, but still pulls pals into her now Freddyless dreams. We meet Kristen's new friends and Freddy's future murder victims. Her karate enthusiast boyfriend Rick, shy daydreaming Alice who's crushing on football player Dan, cockroach-hating rocker Deb, and nerdy Sheila. Freddy rises from the grave before gutting Kincaid and drowning Joey in his waterbed. Freddy dresses in drag to play a nurse, letting Kristen know he's back to his old tricks. She plans to fight back, but her mother drugs her drink, dooming her. Kristen pulls Alice into her dream, infecting her with Freddy's virus, but before she's burned up in a lake of fire, she tosses Alice her main character status and dream powers. Immediately, Freddy begins taking out Alice's friends, sucks the air out of asthmatic Sheila's lungs, gets Rick with his flying claw technique, and Deb gets roached and then motelled. Alice realizes for every soul Freddy eats, she gains that person's ability because of their connection. Alice tries to hit Freddy with Dan's car while sleep driving, sending him to the hospital where they put him under. It's up to Alice to save her boyfriend with all the tokens of her friendship, because if Nightmare on Elm Street has taught us anything, it's that friendship is magic. She battles Krueger in a church, and right when it seems like she's going to lose, a Deus Ex Machina arrives in the form of Krueger's child victims, reminding Alice of a poem that guides her to pulling the old Medusa trick on him, which causes his victims' souls to literally escape from his body, freeing their spirits and killing him. Alice and Dan live happily ever after, until the sequel. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. We begin a year later with Alice making sweet, sweet love to Dan. She has a nightmare where she drowns in her shower before turning into Amanda Krueger the fateful night she was locked away. We meet her brand new batch of best friends on the chopping block, Mark the artistic goofball who's squeamish of blood, Greta the rich one with a controlling mother and modeling aspirations, and Yvonne, her best friend, hospital worker, and high-diving champ. On her way to work, Alice walks into an elaborate flashback-ish, nightmare-ish vision where Amanda once again is giving birth, only this time he's a fetus puppet a la Voldemort until he reaches his glove and grows to full height. His mother swears she'll stop him trying to give Alice advice before she magically finally arrives to work. On Dan's way to Alice, Freddy takes control of his vehicle twice and crashes it twice, killing him the second time. Alice can't understand how this is happening while they're awake until discovering she's pregnant with Dan's baby, and Krueger is affecting the world through his dreams. She talks in visions with the self-named Jacob, and I just now realized he's the kid from Jurassic Park who makes fun of Alan Grant. He looks creepy there, looks creepy here. Freddy begins feeding souls to the baby to make it evil. First he force feeds Greta like a baby doll until she chokes to death. Mark turns into the Take On Me music video, to death. And Yvonne almost high dives to death before being rescued at the last minute by Alice. The final two team up to find Amanda Krueger's ghost in order to put Freddy away for reals. You know the drill. They fight for the kid's soul, get some neat imagery, a million fake outs, Amanda is buried, and Alice gives birth to a healthy baby Jake. They all live happily ever after, and it all ends on an or did they? Freddy's dead, the final nightmare. Springwood's last surviving teen skips town, but Freddy knocks him through the nightmare world into reality with a news article about Krueger's never-before-mentioned wife and zero memory. Police drop him off at a youth shelter where we meet the rest of our cast of victims. Video gamer, stoner, and future John Arbuckle, Spencer, the tough and sassy Tracy, and the lovable goofball Carlos. We also meet Maggie the counselor, who takes the amnesiac back to Springwood to jog his memory while the other kids tag along. The town has gone so mad, Tom Arnold and Roseanne Barr moved there. together. They all decide to squat for the night in the disguised 1428 Elm, where the group gets taken out by visions of their own abusive parents. Low blow, movie. Carlos has his ears forcibly waxed by his mother before Freddy kills him with excruciating sound. Freddy plays Spencer like a video game where his father berates him before he gets stomped, and Tracy at least gets to beat her molester father to death before he turns back into Freddy. The John Doe gets dropped from the sky onto a bed of spikes, and Maggie realizes long after the audience that Freddy Krueger is her father, and Freddy's set on making the youth shelter his new Elm Street. Baby Krueger goes into the dream world armed with a pair of 3D glasses, which has nothing to do with the terrible 3D sequence that follows. We tour Freddy's memories, where we learn the horrible truth that Freddy is a ginger, and that he killed Maggie's mother, she ratted him out, and he's immortal because of some 3D dream demons that infected him. Maggie pulls him into the real world, stabs him a whole bunch, gloves him in the chest, and blows him to bits. And finally, for realsies, Freddy is for sure, definitely, totally dead. A new nightmare. We begin with Wes Craven's meta phase, as Heather Langdon Camp is playing Nancy Thompson in a film with visual effects by her husband. The prop claw begins killing the crew until Heather wakes up to an earthquake in her LA home. She finds out that Wes is planning a new Freddy movie in real life and begins to be plagued by nightmares and phone calls from a stalker singing the Freddy rhyme and leaving burnt letters in her mail. Heather is worried that something from the movie is trying to get at her son Dylan, especially after her husband dies in a freak accident. At the funeral, she has a vision of Freddy and begins seeking advice from former co-stars John Saxon and Robert Englund, also plagued by Freddy visions of their own. As earthquakes continue around the city, her son acts stranger and stranger, seemingly stalked by a nightmare figure himself and doing his best creepy kid routine before eventually going catatonic. Heather visits with Craven, who reveals that Freddy is really an ancient dream creature who takes on different forms, and once he ended the series, the demon escaped and Wes has to finish a new film where Heather plays Nancy to defeat him. She gets attacked by real Freddy, who then kills the babysitter. Heather gets sucked back into the film world and then goes after Freddy in the dream world to get her son back. The two lock him in an oven a la Hansel and Gretel, where he takes his true form, then explodes, bringing the nightmare world down with him. And Heather and Dylan survive to read the finished script. Hope they skip the part where the father gets brutally killed. Freddy versus Jason. Damn, I spent a lot of time talking about part 3. Alright, so Freddy is powerless now that Springwood has forgotten him, so he uses his magic to wake Jason Voorhees' zombie corpse and sends him off to kill in his memory. Jason begins hacking his way through the town's teens, while people slowly remember that, hey, didn't we already have a serial killer? Jason keeps kill blocking, leaving only one fatality to Freddy's name in the entire movie. Freddy dopes Jason up to fight him in the nightmare realm, gets pulled into the real world of Camp Crystal Lake thanks to some of the surviving teens, and then the two duke it out in a ridiculous fight that lasts the rest of the film, and presumably the eternal battle between these two immortal murder monsters continues to this day. A Nightmare on Elm Street remake. The 2010 version reimagines Freddy Krueger as a child molester, getting revenge on his victims for tattling to their parents, resulting in him being burned alive so their kids wouldn't have to go through the trauma of testifying against him. Really sets the mood for a bunch of corny one-liners, right? He's also oddly righteous and angry in his vengeance, instead of being in it purely for the love of the murder. It has some original ideas, but also rehashes a lot. Best friend gets murdered on the ceiling, her boyfriend gets the blame and he dies in jail, this moment. It mainly follows Nancy and Emo Face as they try to figure out how everyone in their kindergarten class has suppressed memories and are having nightmares of the same clawed man before dying shortly after. They even toy with the idea that Freddy was wrongfully accused, which might have worked, except no, it doesn't, because he clearly wasn't. They do the watch me sleep routine where they both fall asleep anyway. Emo Face gets attacked, waking him up just in time to give Nancy the old Mia Wallace special, bringing Freddy back into the real world. They think they kill him, but of course they don't, and in the end, Freddy gets his sweet revenge on all the kids he molested after all. I mean, come on, movie, you must hear how that sounds.
On that uncomfortable note, the Nightmare on Elm Street series ends.
Although another remake is just around the corner in 2018. Until then, thanks for watching and sweet dreams. This program brought to you by Sta Awake. Terrified of falling asleep because of demonic nightmares threatening your life? Battling an undead serial killer who manipulates your unconscious mind in order to kill you while you dream? Then don't just stay awake, Sta Awake. For that, I absolutely have to be up all night because my very life depends on its satisfaction guarantee. On the verge of falling asleep within a matter of seconds? Try new Sta Up. Fast-acting formula. Warning. Side effects include jitteriness, irritability, a crippling sense that no one believes you, fear you may be going insane, and diarrhea. Do not take if nursing or are pregnant with a dream child. If the evil figure killing his way through your friends and family has not been vanquished after 7 days, please consult a sleep specialist. Sta Awake. Powerful enough for a trucker, made for a teenager like you.